Hello and welcome everyone to SAB Talks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emily Stone. I work in science and communications and marketing here at Ideal Protein, and I work very closely with our scientific advisory board. And so this is a new series, SAB Talks, that we wanted to try out. So the idea for the series is that behind the scenes, we have a very active science board, and we wanted to create a space for conversation and connection between them and between our clinics and centers, while also exploring and being able to go deeper into the scientific underpinnings of what we do. So the spirit is really learning and connection, and the format is casual. We want this to feel much more like a conversation that you're sitting in on rather than a lecture. We aren't going heavy on the slides, and we're interested in your feedback. So what's important to you, whether it's today's topic or in the future sessions, we'd love to have that dropped into the chat. And you know, this concept for this series really popped up a few weeks ago, and we wanted to run with it. So we pulled it together. So please keep in mind, this is the first time we're doing this, and excuse any bumps if we hit any along the way. So we do have a crowd coming in and some people still filtering in. So we will ask for your comments and questions added to the chat, and we will do our best to answer throughout the session. And we also have time for Q&A at the end. And if anyone wants to go off mute at that time, they certainly can. We'll call on you to do so. So with that, I'm going to ask Julie to go ahead and go over a few other housekeeping items, and we'll get started.
Okay, so just a few things here. First, this meeting will be recorded as it is, with the intent to give all our clinic partners access to relevant information. Topics presented in these meetings are informational only and not intended as medical advice. And any case examples presented are for learning purposes only and do not apply to other Ideal Protein clients. And lastly, clinic partners who are serving their patients and clients should always defer to that individual's prescribing practitioner. So that'll apply to any of our SAB talks. And then also just some quick courtesy and consideration reminders, just keeping your mics muted so we don't get that background noise. You're going to add any questions to the chat, and we will have some time at the end to answer those. And then also drop in the chat any topics you would like to hear in any future SAB talks. We would love to hear your ideas. And that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Julie. So I want to welcome and introduce the members of our scientific advisory board who are here with us today. We have 3 out of our 5 members. First, we have Dr. Douglas Rothrock, cardiologist, IP clinic owner, and our chief medical advisor for Ideal Protein. And then we have Mike Ciel, pharmacist and an original founding member of the Ideal Protein team. Yeah, hello there. And then last but not least, Dr. John Barnes, chiropractor, IP clinic owner, and host of the Life Possible podcast. So thank you all for being here. And let's move on to the next slide. So electrolytes and ketosis is our topic today, and it's a hot one. We get a lot of questions about that, and I'm very excited to bring this topic to you today. You know, the average person doesn't really worry about electrolytes. We don't generally think about it unless we're maybe a heavy exerciser, or if we have like a sick child. Most of the time we're getting what we need from our food. But in fact, electrolytes are very important to clients on our protocol. And as a result, we do have a significant update coming to the protocol that we'll be going over today. So that's very exciting. And we thought, what better way to release this new information than talk directly with our science team who made those changes. So program for today, we're going to start with Dr. Rothrock and Mike. They will get into the science behind the electrolytes and ketosis. We will reveal what's coming in the protocol. And then Dr. Barnes will go over the practical applications of how you can coach this in your clinic or center. So that's our plan for today. So let's get started. And I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to have Dr. Rothrock kick us off. If you would, Dr. Rothrock, I'd love to have just start with a baseline, some basics about electrolytes, Because let's just kind of talk about what they are and why they're important, both in our bodies and to our clients.
Sure. I mean, just again, a brief introduction about the SAB, the Scientific Advisory Board, and we meet quite often. And our role is to review the protocol, review the science, review all of the things that are happening in Ideal Protein, and try to make sure that it's up to date, make sure that all of the things that we're recommending are in fact based on the latest science. And so this update on the protocol, which we'll go over here pretty soon, was really initiated by a review of the protocol in reference to electrolyte and electrolyte replacement. So why are electrolytes important? Well, those of us that are in the medical field know very well how important they are. But if you're not in the medical field, you may not have thought about it much. But the electrolytes that are really important are sodium, potassium, uh, chloride indirectly, magnesium, and calcium. Those are the really important ones. And why are they important? Well, they're important in our bodies because this sodium and sodium chloride, which is salt, of course, is how we maintain our blood volume in our bodies. That's how the way the kidney regulates our blood pressure and regulates our blood volume, both of which, of course, are very important to our well-being. The other electrolytes are also very important. Nerve cells, muscle cells, all have electrical currents across their cell membranes to maintain their electrical balance. And when a muscle cell or a nerve cell discharges, there's passages of sodium and potassium and chloride across the cell membrane that discharge the cell membrane and make the nerve cell or the muscle cell operate. So the levels of those electrolytes are very important to the functioning of our muscle, our nervous system, and our heart, indirectly, cardiovascular system, et cetera. So they're very, very important. It was really noticed a number of years ago, actually, when Dr. Blackburn was first starting to investigate ketogenic diets back 30, 40 years ago, that people developed what was known as the keto flu. Those of us are all, I think, very aware of the keto flu if you're aware of the protocol, you're aware of the keto flu. And so what is thought is the keto flu, what causes it is in fact a loss of electrolytes that's due to ketosis. And the reason that ketosis causes a loss of electrolytes is a number of things. And one of the major things is that I'm sure you're all aware as we initially go into ketosis, we're breaking down the glycogen tank. Remember the old glycogen tank where we get rid of our carbohydrate storage. The carbohydrate storage in our muscles is stored with 4 molecules of water for each molecule of glycogen. So as you break down the glycogen, you release a lot of water. And again, anybody that's either done the protocol or been around anybody that does the protocol spends the first 3 or 4 nights in the bathroom as we diurese rather dramatically. Well, anytime that you diurese or send a lot of water out through the kidneys or out through your body, you're going to lose electrolytes because the kidney can only maintain so much retention of potassium, chloride, and magnesium. So you lose electrolytes in that way, more so than you normally would under normal conditions. The other really interesting thing, I think, which is really important, and again, we've all seen this who've done the protocol with our patients, when you lower the carbohydrate intake dramatically, what also happens, remember that that's going to reduce your insulin level. And one of the things that insulin does is cause your kidney to retain sodium and chloride, and to a certain extent, potassium. And so when you lower the insulin level, your kidney all of a sudden loses not only fluid, but it also loses potassium, sodium, chloride, and magnesium because of the lowered insulin levels. And again, I'm sure all of you have seen that people's blood pressures who might have been high at the initiation of the protocol within weeks actually really reduces significantly, and the amount of blood pressure medicine that people need really goes down significantly because of that lowered insulin level and the fact that we're losing electrolytes through our kidney as a result of that lowered insulin level. And that also relates to so there's sort of a short-term loss of electrolytes due to the glycogen tank and losing the fluid there. But there's also a long-term de requirement for extra electrolytes because of the reduced insulin levels. So even as you go along in the ketosis over time, there's an increased requirement for electrolytes. Um, Emily,
Wow, I just want to interject and say I think I just got a master's degree in electrolyte management and ketosis.
Doug, the other thing that's interesting is when we're going to phase one, like you said, we dramatically drop our insulin levels, but simultaneously we raise our glucagon levels. And glucagon does the exact opposite of what insulin tells your body to do. So your body says, insulin says, retain sodium, retain my minerals. Glucagon says, let it go. That's why we need to supplement. Now, this is not dangerous, you know, as long as we understand what's going on. So in phase one, you are glucagon dominant, and glucagon does wonderful things for those folks who were hyperinsulinemic before. Now, when we get into maintenance, we're going to be we want to be in homeostasis. So we have insulin and glucagon that's balanced. Insulin says, retain the minerals. Glucagon says, no, let them go. But if they're balanced, your kidneys can regulate your electrolytes exquisitely precise. And that's what we want to do. And then a lot of prescription medications are no longer necessary.
Absolutely, Mike. That's a great point. And a lot of people, I think one of the things that I think a lot of people hear is that you need to restrict sodium, especially people that have high blood pressure, and that restriction of sodium is important. But restriction of sodium only goes so far. There is a recommended daily allowance for sodium, which we'll talk about a little bit later on when we talk about the specifics of our change in the protocol. But there is a recommended daily allowance. And even when you limit sodium intake for blood pressure, it's usually at 3,000 milligrams a day. Even in hospital, it's 2,000 milligrams a day, which is, by the way, very hard to do. It's very hard to do a 2,000 milligram sodium diet. That is very, very difficult. 3,000 is hard enough to do in a regular diet format. But so people get sometimes scared of adding additional sodium and chloride and potassium to their diet because they've been taught to try to limit these things. But the rationale, of course, in ketosis, which has been discovered over the years, is that we need to add the extra electrolytes to make sure that we are in adequate electrolyte balance so we don't get the keto flu, which, as people have seen, results to headaches, lightheadedness, dizziness, some nausea sometimes. All these are related to electrolyte deficiencies. Cramps are very important. Anybody that's overseen the protocol knows that people get cramps, especially in their legs at night, and that almost always is due to potassium and magnesium depletion.
It's a lot there. It's very, very helpful to set our stage. So clearly, electrolytes are extremely important to just basic body functions. We're dumping them during the protocol, both initially because of losing that glycogen and the extra water, and then also just on an ongoing basis because of the hormonal shifts. Our kidneys aren't holding on to the electrolytes. So that is a really good.
And to make a point of how important these electrolytes are, especially in the hot weather, like in our southern clinics. Like I used to live in Florida, and the guys in the UPS truck, and the guys that are working on building houses, changing the roofs, doing lawn maintenance, and they're doing our protocol. They're drinking pure water because they're sweating, right? Well, if you drink pure water, it's going to make it worse. That's called dilutional hyponatremia because you're losing electrolytes, but you're putting pure water in. And I'll tell you how important this is. In 1966, the University of Florida Gators stunk. I mean, we were low mediocre at best. We invented Gatorade.
You were there at the time. Oh, yeah.
In 1967, we won the Orange Bowl. We beat Georgia Tech, beat them bad, and we had the Heisman Trophy winner. Do you know, after that season, all sports started drinking Gatorade. And so this is really important because those guys, when you play football in Florida in September, our first game's late August and October, and you're in that gear and that field is like, actually Louisiana calls theirs Death Valley. Well, it's like that. And they're sweating. These guys were dropping. They had to go in the locker room and get an IV. And by the fourth quarter, they were wiped. So when we started giving our guys Gatorade, man, we whacked them. And that's it. So this is really important stuff.
Absolutely. Well,
Leave it to Mikey to steal the show.
And Gatorade, for those of you who haven't really looked into it, basically was invented by the trainer of the Gators, and it's basically the electrolytes of blood with water and a flavoring agent. That the inventor of Gatorade is no longer a football trainer, I don't think.
But we got Powerade, Sports Aid, and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Anyway,
why don't we move it along then? We've definitely established a clear need, whether you're a football player or an ideal protein client. So let's go ahead. I'd love to shift to the protocol update. So Julie, if you don't mind just bringing up our slide, what I'm going to do is I will walk through the changes that we have coming to the phase 1 sheets, and then we can discuss in a little bit more detail. So here we have up here a snippet of the phase 1 sheet. This is the daily essentials section on the far right side, beside all the meals, where we have the oil and the water and the salt. So you'll see we've added a new row for salt. So it's now official that salt is part of the protocol, and we want people to be taking salt for these reasons that we just described. So you'll see there that it says 1 teaspoon of regular salt or the equivalent. So the equivalent there is referring to any salty foods or drinks that contribute to sodium. So things like pickles or broth or electrolyte drinks. So those can absolutely be part of meeting that salt requirement. I also want to point out that we have ideal salt is still on the sheet. It's a 1/4 teaspoon of ideal salt. That's the same. Both are required. So we'll get into a little bit of the details of why both are required, but I just wanted to point out that they are both on there. And then the other thing is just to notice that it is really just plain regular salt. We've made this very general and inclusive of a lot of different kinds of salt. So we'll talk about that as well. So that's our change for the regular phase 1 ketogenic protocol. Now we are also introducing a change to the low carb flex protocol. So here is the same piece of snippet on the low carb flex. Now low carb flex is not ketogenic. So the discussion around the ketosis aspect of this is not as relevant here. But like Dr. Rothrock was saying, we look closely at the protocol and review the recommendations, and we saw that there was room to increase the amount of salt just to make sure that people are hitting the required daily amount. So to ensure basic needs are met, because our foods are pretty low in salt, sodium, and when you eat healthy foods, you're not getting a lot of sodium. So we do have a little bump up there on the low carb flex sheet. So, all right, so let's discuss this. And I want to start just by saying, like, well, why this change now? Some people out there might be thinking, well, why didn't we have this on the sheet before? Did we just realize that we need salt? So Mike, you were in part of IP in the earlier founding days. So can you just love to get your perspective?
Back in the beginning, we recommended salt, and we promoted Redmond salt because everybody wanted to have like trace minerals in their salt. And when we are one of the most common questions we got when we started the SSC was fatigue, brain fog, dizziness, and 100%, or well, 99.9% of the time, it was salt. They didn't get enough salt because, like Dr. Rothrock said in the beginning, especially the folks that are on high blood pressure, or even if they had a like a more of a natural MD who would push like the DASH diet, dietary approaches, stop hypertension. They were told no salt, watch your salt. Salt's bad. It's bad. It's bad. So if I started saying that, oh man, yeah, you need more salt. You need more salt. And then had a couple of our early physicians, before they really knew ketosis and how good our program was. Oh, that's a terrible recommendation. No, 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 no. So we kind of didn't want to shout that too loud, but it was like, yeah, you need the sodium when you're in strong ketosis. So we kind of evolved. Now there's a lot of interest, as you all know, with ketogenic diets. With that crummy DIY thing, but and so everybody recognizes you do need these electrolytes, especially sodium. So now a lot of physicians are more familiar with keto type programs. So now we feel not only very comfortable, but it's our obligation to explain why you need this. And so that's where the changes came from. But still to this day, we are one of the most common questions again is fatigue, brain fog, and dizziness. Yeah, so we really got to make sure our clients are getting their sodium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I know to bring up what might be on what I'm seeing in the chat over here, a lot of our clients and coaches are used to using the Redmond salt. So let's talk a bit about the types of salt, what kind of salt we are envisioning here. And I know a lot of us have been using this for years. So let's talk about why we're allowing different types of salt. And Dr. Arthur, maybe you could kick that off.
Okay. Again, going back to what Mike said too, I think that some of our product have changed as well, and due to a really great review by Emily, in fact, and the team, we sort of realized also that the products we have don't have as much sodium in it as some of the older products that we used to carry 10, 15 years ago, especially the soups. So that review really was what kicked off this whole idea that we needed to review the sodium intake and stuff like that. A lot of it was due to the good work that Emily did on reviewing all of the particular ideal protein products. So the different salts, I think there's a couple of very interesting things about salt in general. Uh, I think a lot of people perceive that healthy salt, if you will, is Himalayan pink salt or Hawaiian black salt or various salts out there. A lot of them have mild mineral content, but not a lot of minerals, frankly, even though they're sort of touted to have that. It's mostly sodium chloride with some minor mineral content. And one of the more important things that's happening in North America now is that because people have switched to using what would be called natural salts, if you will, that people are actually becoming iodine deficient, We're seeing that in a lot of our patients in that handle thyroid disease, endocrinology. I do endocrinology, so I see iodine deficiency. And in Hashimoto's disease and thyroid is partly due to iodine deficiency. And of course, before 1929, the salt had no added iodine. That's when iodine was added to salt. So one of the reasons to promote actually the use of salts that are like Morton salt or some of the salts that have iodine added to them is because of the iodine deficiency idea. So we're promoting the use of iodized salt for the majority of the sodium intake. Now, there's obviously other sources of salt, and iodized salt's not a good salt to cook with. So if you do cook with salt, it has a bitter flavor. So you want to cook with a regular salt that doesn't have iodine in it. But for sodium replacement, for salt replacement, we tend to lean again now towards an iodized salt. So I think that's the this we had a big discussion about this at the SAB and how to think about recommending these various sorts of salts. So we took away kind of some of the limitations that were previously on the protocol.
Yeah, what you said yesterday too, Doug, when we were talking about this, that's exactly what I do. I do most of the cooking at our house, and I have my pink salt, my Hawaiian black salt, and my Redmond salt, and I use those for cooking because the table salt, the iodized salt, uh, if you're cooking a really, elegant meal, you can really taste the difference. But for the supplementation, yes, I'm totally with iodized salt. And just an FYI, in pharmacy, we always look at New Zealand and Australia. Their pharmaceutics are really top notch. Their recommendations now is they're putting iodine in bread in addition to the salt because they said that that's a good putting it in the salt was a good thing, but it's not enough. So they're putting it in their breads.
Yeah,
So
we
don't
the
be
U.S.
afraid of iodine. In the old days, iodine, the bottle had a skull and crossbones on it, and you put that on your cut. And no, 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 no. Iodine's a very important, especially for the ladies. Especially for the ladies, it's very, very important.
Yeah, they in the U.S. they used to put iodine in flour. They took it out in the 1980s. So again, another um, lacking of iodine in our diet that the authorities tried to prevent by putting iodine in flour, which was removed in the 1980s.
Okay,
So
so just to summarize, we've got room for both. Really, we're in our guidelines are inclusive of either type because there are times that you want to use the more natural ones in your cooking, but people can also really benefit from iodine, is what I'm hearing. So not to mention that your basic salt is the least expensive too. So we've got the pros of both kinds here. I want to move us along to ideal salt and why that is still important. And I want to take a moment to just acknowledge that ideal salt is currently in the works for coming back into stock. So I know it's been a pain point we've got, but I wanted to let you all know that it actually is in motion. We found a supplier. It was more difficult to find a supplier than anticipated. Pharmalab had previously produced this for us. So we should be seeing that this spring. In the meantime, I also want to point out that Sarah is dropping some alternatives to ideal salt that are available to be used on the protocol because it is an important part of the protocol. So there are some products on the market that you can use in this interim period, which should not last much longer. So let's just talk about why ideal salt still.
Well, there's a historical element to it that, I hate to admit that Mike and I have been around so long, but we've been around a long time on this protocol. And, um, uh, you know, uh, back in the day, we actually had a potassium tablet that was utilized for the potassium supplementation. It turned out that it was around 10 milliequivalents of potassium, which turns out to be higher than is legally allowed to be marketed without a prescription. So Mike and I came up with the idea of using the potassium-containing salts to supplement the potassium. And that's the reason for the dual use of the two different salts, is the one has potassium in it. So the and that's how we can legally get enough potassium in the protocol to not be a bother with the regulator folk. Yeah, Mike and I think we figured that out over some dinner about 20 years ago or 18 years ago or something like that. So anyhow.
All right. And then I also just wanted to touch on our sodium goals. What's the goal we have in mind here? We're asking people to add a teaspoon of salt. Can you talk about how that fits into what we need in ketosis and where it's coming from on protocol? Dr. Rothrock.
What were you gonna? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Okay, no worries. Everybody. I'm just asking about the goal for sodium that is helps people in ketosis and how that teaspoon is going to help meet that.
Yeah, we'd like to have people have at least 3,000 milligrams of salt a day, and more salt is even okay, up to even 5,000 milligrams. So, it's those are kind of the goals for the sodium intake, which of course would pull chloride along with it as well, since it's sodium chloride. But those are kind of the goals. And then the goals again for potassium are somewhere around 10 milliequivalents.
So we've set this teaspoon at a bit of a kind of a minimum.
Right. It is a bit of a minimum. And so that leads, I think, to, when people start having symptoms, you still, like Mike said, one of the common questions we still get at the Scientific Support Center is the fatigue and the lightheadedness and all of that. So that leaves some room to continue to add some more sodium. And that's what typically we would recommend. So we're talking about protocol amounts here and trying to make sure that we achieve the minimums, but not necessarily sometimes what the coaches have to recognize as the requirement to add some more.
Yeah, and so remember, guys, that some of the sodium, that 3,000 that Dr. Rothrock just mentioned, is going to be coming. Some of that is going to come from ideal salt, and it is going to come from the your ideal protein foods. And one of the recommendations that remains is to include a salty ideal protein food every day. So we do have a number of products, the more savory items, soups, chips, and that helps us get to that 3,000 minimum goal.
I don't know whether it's an appropriate time. I keep seeing all these questions popping up here at the bottom. I don't know whether it's an appropriate time to say a few words about some of the questions. One of them is, why don't we have an electrolyte product? Well, this morning at the SAB meeting, guess what? That was about half the discussion, and it's coming within weeks. Our manufacturer is coming up with a protocol right now, and or a product right now, and be sending it out to the SAB to taste and make sure it tastes okay and everything, and then it'll be on the product list, I think, very soon. So what are other big questions I saw?
Before we launch into all the Q&A, I do want to touch on the shift over just to the coaching side of this, because Dr. Barnes coaches this in his clinic. He's been coaching this for a while, and he does have a really beautiful way of how he describes it. So I'd love to just have him walk us through your talk track, Dr. Barnes, and we can just answer a few more of the questions around how do we get this across to the.
I'm sorry, Dr. Barnes, if I stole some of your thunder there.
Literally, this is why you never go last, right? Right. Well, thank you, Emily. I thought you'd never ask me. And as the youngest member of the SAB, I'd like to say, hey, you know what? This is really exciting for me because this is something that I've been looking forward to getting officially addressed by Ideal Protein Corporate. About 3 years ago, I did an episode of the Life Possible podcast with Ed Reardon, and we did it on electrolytes because Ed was the person who taught me all about it. And we really started to teach and tell all the other clinics about this, and so it was a really big deal. But there was still a lot of fear in the company, and I was even called on the carpet by a clinic, telling me that we were telling people too much sodium, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really great now to finally see this come through official guidelines. So, we did. Dr. Rothrock and Mike talked all about the scientific aspect of it. And I like to try to, when I'm talking with my clients, I love to teach them the science and I want to try to make it applicable. So for me, when I'm in a consultation going through the phase one sheet, and I get to the point where we talk about the salt and the sodium and the electrolytes. What I like to teach them, because they've got a lot of fear of sodium coming in. And we have to try to diffuse that. And so what I like to teach them is if you eat the old pyramid, if you eat the way they taught you to eat, then yes, sodium can be bad and sodium can contribute to high blood pressure. However, it's going to be different when we're in phase one. So when you're in carbtosis is different from when you're in ketosis. And I did steal that from somebody. But so when you're in carbtosis, insulin is the hormone in charge of your metabolism. And insulin tells your body to retain all the excess sodium that comes in. And so in that first week, when insulin is forced to give up control of your metabolism, you're going to dump all the extra sodium, you're going to dump all the extra bloat water, and your blood volume might actually go down. And so we might see blood pressure change pretty quickly. When glucagon takes over, glucagon, just like Mikey said, glucagon does the opposite of what insulin says to do. And glucagon tells your kidneys, please filter out any excess sodium that has come in. But what that does is it creates a daily need for us to get sodium in. This is a really great time too to discuss with your patient about low blood pressure. Here's the thing, right? We're always concerned about people with high blood pressure, and people that come in the program with low blood pressure fly under the radar. And I've had some really bad experiences, especially early on. If people normally have low blood pressure, their blood pressure is going to crash during that first week. And telling them to put a little extra pinch of salt in is really not going to do that for them. And so we really want to find out from them, hey, how does your blood pressure normally run? I know you don't have high blood pressure, but it's usually on the low side, like 105 over 60. Okay, you need to start from day one adding the sodium in. And what's fascinating is these people feel better than they have ever. I've had a couple of people who have traditionally had low blood pressure, and we teach them to supplement their sodium, and it changes their life all by itself. We talk about, yes, the keto flu, and we say during this first week, come somewhere around day 3, day 4, you might start to get headachy or you might feel lightheaded, get some brain fog, dizziness when you're getting up and down out of chairs. This is a sign that you really do need to start paying attention to the sodium. And so I have traditionally had a sodium handout, just like we're about ready to give to everybody else. I've traditionally had one that we keep in their folder. I tell them to review that when they get home in its entirety. And then we're used to giving people a care call, a phone call from one of our coaches during day 2 or day 3 to answer any questions they have. It's our procedure during that call to actually talk to them again. Have you read the sodium handout? Are you feeling any bad symptoms at this stage of the game? And let's start looking at some of those things, some of those ways to get sodium in. For me, it's about building habits. It's not about telling them, I don't want them to pull out their calculator and figure out how many thousands of milligrams of sodium they're getting in. We just want to teach them habits that are going to give them sodium all day long, because you don't want to have it all up front and not any in the afternoon. You want to be getting it all day long. And so, we go through all these different things. The first one being, let's make sure that one of your ideal protein foods during the day is one of our saltier ideal protein foods. We had a list. It was a very outdated list, and you're going to get this on one of your sheets. Emily painstakingly went through all the products. She created a great table of some of our higher sodium foods. And yes, the soups are always up there. But man, cheddar cheese sauce comes in with the win at 880 grams of milligrams of sodium in that packet. So, that and the cheese omelet. A lot of those are your higher sodium foods. So let's make sure they've got a salty crunchy, or they've got one of these food items as at least one of the three they're getting every day. I also asked them, do you like pickles? Oh, I love pickles, Doc. Great. I want you to make pickles a regular part of your vegetables every day. I don't want you to get sick of them, but I'd like for you to include them very frequently so that you can get sodium from there. In fact, some people enjoy drinking the pickle juice, right? Beef broth, chicken broth, great things to use as far as cooking goes. You can use them in recipes, or a nice warm mug of beef or chicken broth before bed. Ed taught me keeps you in bed at night because the sodium will keep the water inside and keep you from having to run to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And soy sauce. Yeah, absolutely. Let's cook with soy sauce. It doesn't even have to be the low sodium soy sauce. But if you like that, let's use that very commonly. And then electrolyte replacement drinks. Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about that. Ed and I had taught people before, and there's still discussion within the community. What electrolytes do you carry in your office? Ed really liked those fizz tablets from Hammer Nutrition. Our people didn't really catch on to those too well. We've actually been using a product called LMNT or Element. And I found this while I was training for my triathlon because I was a keto athlete. Um, and so we've been using that. I know a lot of clinics have been using that. The Science Advisory Board right now is recommending that might be a great supplement to recommend to your people. But yes, Doug stole my thunder because I thought I was going to be the guy to announce that we are working on our own electrolyte replacement drink. Rod Egger is right on top of this. Both Element is both near and dear to his heart and my heart. And we're going to create one that's going to be even more usable for our clients with Ideal Protein. Our water enhancers really are not electrolytes. Okay, that's really a misnomer. There's 100 milligrams of salt in each one of those little packets. And so, what I tell my people is I at least want you to get 4 or 5 in a day. That'll give you 400 to 500 milligrams of sodium if you want to use flavor enhancers. But that's not to be considered an electrolyte replacement. So please don't think of it. That's why this product is going to be different from our water enhancers. Our water enhancers are basically to give you flavor. It's for those people that say, gross, I don't like water. And, who want something sweet. And what I'll tell you is my people, including myself, I'll use some LMNT in my water, and it is inherently salty to taste. And I might put a little bit of the raspberry lemonade, or, we've got people that mix and match all kinds of flavors. So it actually, it's a lot of fun. Very specifically, I do like to tell people. So Ed taught me caffeine, sweat, and alcohol, my 3 favorite things, are the 3 things that leach sodium out of your body. That's the mechanism where alcohol and caffeine dehydrate you through your kidneys, as they actually tell your kidneys to get rid of sodium. And so water follows, and that's why you go to the bathroom a lot. We lose a lot of sodium and a lot of electrolytes during sweat and especially during our exercise. And so, if our people are drinking coffee, again, we talked about giving them extra water for that. But in fact, what we want to do is make sure that they're adding extra salt in. That makes them need more salt than the average person. If they're exercising, that sweat is going to increase their need for salt. In general, like Dr. Rothrock said, guidelines for anybody in a state of ketosis is between 3,000 and 5,000 milligrams in a day. And so we want a minimum of 3,000, but if we engage in these other things, you might start climbing that ladder and need more. But also I like to teach people is that if you're exercising in zone 2 exercise or whatever you're doing in phase 1, if you're sweating, preload your electrolytes. When people exercise, if they feel lightheaded or dizziness or any perceived lack of energy, they automatically think it's low blood sugar. They want an extra packet. They want to have some, can I have some carbs, et cetera. It's not. When you're exercising in a state of ketosis, that's low sodium and low blood pressure that might give you that lightheadedness. So preload that sodium so you've got it for your workout and you won't actually feel those symptoms at all. Yeah, I think I covered it all.
Yeah, that's great, Dr. Barnes. And like I say, it's got to be customized and thought by every coach in different parts of the country. I'm in a weird place. I live at 6,000 feet in Arizona, and our humidity here is about 10% most of the time. We lose a lot more sodium here than you might in Mississippi and or Florida. So, again, thinking about these things in different parts of the country are important too, because it's variable depending on where you are. High altitude, low humidity, high humidity, low altitude, all those things change the way people feel.
And I think it's also important to keep asking them as they're going through protocol. It's not just the first week, it's every week. And I always ask my people, well, how do you feel? Because if they don't feel amazing, if they, I get sleepy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I've got this brain fog, you're not getting your sodium. We need to increase that sodium. Let's get some at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to combat the sleepies. Advanced class, and we can talk about this at Super Weekend because I also want to tease that Super Weekend. But advanced class is, we coach our sodium and our hydration based on in-body because, hydration, I like to teach people, is getting water inside your muscles. And sodium is what gets water from outside the muscles inside the muscles. If we start seeing their muscle number drop, it's because they're dehydrated as well. We can make that bounce right back up by making sure that they're increasing their sodium intake at home. So it's important to coach it all the way through phase 1.
So just to kind of recap a lot of this, our water enhancers, like John said, is exactly for flavor. They came out in response to the Mio craze. Guys, remember that? At least everybody. And Mio says, you put a couple drops. Well, they give you a squirt bottle. So after about 3 glasses of water, 4 glasses of water, your Mio's empty and you got to buy more. And that was actually stalling people out with their weight loss. So we came out, that's what the water enhancers are
Yep.
for flavor. The electrolytes are for the sodium, the potassium, and the magnesium. Now, generally speaking, if they're fatigued, brain fog, dizzy, that's pretty almost sodium. If they're cramping up, then it's potassium and magnesium generally. Now, I saw a question come up. Well, until we get our electrolytes and the ideal salt back, can I give them extra potassium tablets? Well, that's a little dicey because the FDA and Health Canada, it's like we 99 milligrams per dose, over the counter. Yes, you can give them 4 tablets, which each tablet is about 2.5, what we call milliequivalents. So 4 is about 10. That's kind of like our old, big tablet. But if you're getting in that situation, please contact the Scientific Support Center so we can review the health profile. We can check their prescription drugs because if they're on some prescription drugs and you give them some potassium, that could be big trouble. So when in questions that I like to double check with Dr. Rothrock, I always like to tell, hey, Doug, yeah, they're getting about like 6 million equivalents or something. So he knows what's coming down. That's why if you're going to recommend in the time being for an electrolyte replacement, we would really encourage you to use that LMNT because that's kind of going to be what ours is going to be like. So we want everybody to get the same stuff. I don't want, XYZ brand. I want Costco brand. I got this brand. We got to know what they're taking. Okay. When it comes down, especially when it comes down to medical issues.
Yeah, and of course, again, potassium is even more important than sodium in terms of cardiac function, cardiac electrograms, electrical activity of nerve tissues and heart tissue. Um, One thing we haven't mentioned here, by the way, which I just thought I would throw in, is this doesn't really affect the calcium supplementation. Calcium is also an important electrolyte for many of the same reasons we're talking about. So make sure that our clients are taking the calcium supplement that Ideal Protein provides. Um, Very important.
Let's dive into some of those questions. Sarah, do you have any queued up?
Yeah, sorry, just coming off mute. So,
no worries.
there was one question that Phil posed, asking about our current water enhancers, that he finds a lot of his clients who are taking those are actually using the restroom more often, when we would think that it might be the opposite, thinking they would be more hydrated. Can you guys comment on that?
Again, it's because they're not electrolyte replacements. They're flavor enhancements. So it's not staying in. The water's not staying in. It's just passing through.
Yeah, and if you increase your fluid intake, of course, your kidneys are going to balance that by diuresing to a certain extent to the level of fluid that your body is requiring based on the level of antidiuretic hormone, the level of cortisone, level of epinephrine, all those things, which we really haven't talked about, will uh, partly relate to the fluid balance that your body has.
And sorry, I was just replying to a question quickly as well. A few folks have asked, what about smart water? Does that count as a potential electrolyte replacement?
No, it's not enough.
All right. And then I think Leah also mentioned a couple other brands. I know, Mike, you just said let's stick to Element, but she mentioned Ultima or Legion Athletics, and that they are 00. Have you heard of those brands?
Those
Yeah,
brands.
there's so many brands out there. I don't have the label in front of me, so I don't know what they're getting. So if they're using another brand and you're having an issue, if somebody's cramping up or they got the fatigue or brain fog, um, if they're using something else, and we really don't recommend it, make sure you send us a screenshot of that label so we know what's in there. Okay.
Yeah, and it's been our experience in our clinic that people do get short-circuited when they're using all kinds of different products. Even though it may or may not have no sugar, whatever they're using, sometimes hiding under natural flavorings creates an insulin response. And so I always just tell people if they insist, go ahead and do it, but write it down. Let's take a look at that. And if it stalls you out, we're going to know the answer, right?
Cindy has an interesting question. Why not 2 potassium capsules daily versus Ideal Protein salt?
Again, that was a over-the-counter legalistic. It's a legal requirement, a legal restriction. Um, in a prescribing clinic, you can prescribe a 10 milliequivalent potassium tablet. But in terms of the protocol, we have to deal with non-prescribing clinics are the majority. So we have to be able to deliver the potassium adequately without a prescription. And the largest amount that you can sell over the counter at a time is 99 milligrams,
Right.
which is 2 milliequivalents, 2 to 2.5 depending, but it's not enough. And again, we back in the day when we were looking at the Ideal Salts business, the we thought about recommending 4 tablets a day, but it just seemed it just seemed clumsy, and you had to buy quite a bit of the potassium tablets if you were going to do 4 a day. So that's why we evolved into the current recommendations.
Yeah, they're taking enough tablets already. People complain at this stage of the game.
There's that thing called Murphy's Law. If something goes wrong, it's going to go wrong at the worst possible time. If you tell them to take 4 or 5 potassium tablets and something happens, you could get busted for practicing medicine without a license. I mean, that's the extreme. But over the counter, it's 99 milligrams. So when Doug and I were out to dinner at a super weekend ages ago, I don't know, that one restaurant they had, it was a high class restaurant. And so they had, a salt substitute, which was potassium. Oh, we put down, oh my God, it tastes like shit. And but they were there and, hey, this is a way we can get around the potassium. We'll tell them because you can go to any grocery store and buy it. So that's where that came from. So
Yeah.
I'd be very, very careful about telling them taking extra potassium tablets. Ask that scientific support center first. We're used to that. We'll get right back to you right away. If there's issues with medications, I always check with Doug. So do that.
All right, I
And
think we
also,
have time
too,
for one more quick question.
I would like to say real quick, we've got the Morton's Light Salt here in our clinic that we're selling, because the Morton's Light Salt is basically about the same. You can get that if you buy a case of 12 from Amazon yourself and mark it up. I mean, it's not that we're profiting off of it. You'll make a buck or two, but you'll have it on your shelves until we get the ideal protein salt back. So really not as big of a challenge, I guess, for America. I don't know about Canada, but for us here, that's how we're getting around that. And we've got it here in the office. I'm sorry, Emily.
It's okay. Do we have any quick questions, Sarah?
No, I think we covered most of them, or people covered them in the chat. Although I guess here at the end, a few people looking for the talk track and maybe, just relabeling how we speak about the water enhancers. But I think that has been asked and answered today.
Yeah.
As we end up here on, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. One of the things I just wanted to remind everybody is we've got the 2 super weekends coming up, and we really would like to have many come to the 2 super weekends we have scheduled. So, talk to your representative and stuff and see if you can come and join us for the super weekend. I'd love to see all of you all again for this year's super weekend. We've got one in Calgary and one in Austin coming up in April. Dr. Tran will be there. The Eggers will be there. We'll all be there, of course. And so we'd all love to see you and have a cup of coffee with you and break some bread.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I've been told to bring my boots, so I'm not quite sure what that's about.
I'm in Arizona, so I have my own cowboy hat. I'm pretty prepared.
Oh, there you go.
And guys, we changed the format, so it's new. It's going to be a lot of new stuff. It's not going to be the same old. So I know, like, hey Lisa, you shaker, I mean, you know these super weekends by heart. Well, it's a lot of new material. So it's good.
Well, I come anyways. I don't care if it's the same stuff because you always learn something. It's all good.
Great. All right, guys, this has been such an awesome discussion. I think it would be really fun to continue it, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So I just want to close us out with the plan going forward. We've obviously talked about some big changes here coming to the protocol. And I want to let you know that if you go to the client library right now, you will be able to download those new sheets. The phase 1 sheets are up there. And the SALT guidelines are up there as well. We now have 2 different SALT guideline documents. So there's the SALT guidelines for coaches, which is similar to what was there before. That's kind of your back pocket information, covers a lot of what we talked about today. And then there's also the new SALT guidelines that Dr. Barnes talked about. So this is one is client facing. It describes the difference between ideal salt and regular salt. It gives those sources of sodium. So that's a great brand new resource we have for you. So we are actively updating about 20 other documents that mention salt or ideal salt to make sure everything is completely aligned. We're most of the way through that, but when all of the materials are out, we are going to notify you by our newsletter and in the platform, and we will put them all in one place so you can just download them. They will of course also be up in the client library, but we'll put them in a SharePoint folder so that you can grab them all at once. We're close to having that ready to go. And we've also ordered new folders for the IP store. So when you those are going to take another 4 to 5 weeks to come in, but they are on the way. So we're soon going to have it so that when you order your folders, you will get the new sheets in there, and also updated journals. So we updated the journal. It's now got tracking. I saw a question in the comments about keeping track. Well, the journal is going to help with that. It's got a place for tracking salt and a place for clients to write in if they're taking electrolyte drinks or whatnot. We're also going to be updating the IP Academy so that all of our courses are up to date too. So we will let you know when all of those updates come out. And otherwise, I just want to thank everyone today for your participation, for attending. And we will have this recording. This is recorded. We'll put that out in the newsletter as well. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day. Thanks so much for joining us.
And we in the SAB, we're talking about having this like once a month. If you guys liked it, and if for future topics, please email Emily or myself or somebody. Give us an idea of what's important in your clinics so we can put together, a good thing. I think this is great. We love talking to you directly. And closing, be like a gator. Drink your electrolytes.
Thanks, homie.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.